The sun beat down hard on the dusty plains of the American West. Jack Rivers, a cowboy by trade, was known for his toughness and his quick gun. He had survived more than his fair share of dangers. But today he had met something he could not handle alone. He had been hunting for a few days, his horse carrying him deep into the land near the Apache borderlands. He had been warned about this area, but he needed the game. What he didn't expect was to be ambushed by a ruthless group of bandits. They had caught him by surprise, shooting him in the leg and leaving him stranded in a dry ravine. His horse was stolen, and the only thing that kept him alive was the stubborn will to survive. Jack lay in the dirt, blood soaking his pants, and the world spinning around him. He had tried to crawl out of the ravine, but his strength was fading fast. The sun was setting, and soon the night would come. He knew if he didn't get help soon, he would be a goner. Just as his vision blurred and the last bit of hope left him, a shadow fell over him. At first he thought it was a dream, but then he saw a figure on horseback riding alone. The figure was a woman, her face hidden beneath a hood. Her horse was strong, galloping across the rocky ground with ease. The woman stopped in front of him and dismounted. As she knelt beside him, Jack tried to speak, but his throat felt dry and no words came out. She touched his forehead, checking for fever, then looked at the blood on his leg. "You're lucky," she said in a quiet voice. "We found you before the coyotes did." Jack tried to focus on her face, but it was hard. He felt weak, his world spinning in and out. He had been saved, but by whom? He didn't know. The woman's eyes, dark and steady, never left him as she worked quickly, cleaning his wound with herbs and bandages she had pulled from her saddlebag. She worked silently, as if she had done this many times before. When she finished, she looked down at him again, her gaze thoughtful. "We can't stay here. It's not safe. Who are you?" Jack managed to ask, his voice rough. The woman didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced around as if sensing something. After a moment, she spoke again. "My name is Nayeli. I'm Apache." Nayeli looked up at the sky, her face full of concern. "We need to move now." "Can you walk?" Jack shook his head, but the movement sent pain shooting through his leg. He winced, his eyes squeezing shut. Nayeli didn't wait for a response. She grabbed his arm, pulling him to his feet with surprising strength for someone so small. She placed his arm around her shoulder and began to walk him toward her horse. Despite the pain, Jack found himself amazed by the woman's strength and determination. He wasn't sure how long he had been unconscious, but it felt like days. He had no idea how she had found him, or why she had bothered to help him. All he knew was that he was alive, and it was because of this mysterious Apache woman. They reached her horse, and Nayeli helped Jack onto the animal's back. She climbed behind him, taking the reins in one hand, and with the other she guided the horse through the desert, heading toward a distant ridge. Jack's head swam with the pain, but he couldn't help but notice the way Nayeli moved with such confidence, like she had been riding in this land her entire life. The ride took longer than Jack expected, and by the time they arrived at a small Apache camp nestled in a valley, the sun was almost gone. The camp was peaceful, surrounded by high cliffs that offered protection from any outsiders. Jack could see tents made of animal hides, campfires crackling, and the shadows of people moving in the distance. Nayeli led the horse to the center of the camp, where a group of Apache women were gathered around a fire. They all looked up as she approached. The women stood, and one of them, taller and stronger than the others, walked forward. "Who is this?" the woman asked, her voice rough but kind. "This is Jack Rivers," Nayeli said, helping Jack down from the horse. "He was attacked by bandits. I think he's going to live, but he needs care." The tall woman, who had a commanding presence, nodded. "I'm Tala. I will take care of him." She turned to one of the other women, a pony who had been standing silently by the fire. "Get the herbs and blankets. We need to keep him warm." A pony moved quickly, her hand steady as she gathered what was needed. She worked with a quiet grace, her eyes always on Jack as she tended to his injuries. Jack, though weak and exhausted, couldn't help but feel an odd sense of safety in their presence. These women weren't just skilled. They were strong, and their presence made him feel like he had been found by more than just a random group of travelers. As they worked, Tala and a pony asked Jack about his past. He told them about his life as a cowboy, how he had been chasing down game when the bandits attacked. He didn't mention how he had been alone or how he had failed to notice the dangers around him. Instead, he focused on what he could do, how he could help. how he could fight back. Nayeli listened quietly, then spoke. "You are a warrior." "Jack, you're not like the others." Jack didn't know how to respond to that. He wasn't a warrior, not like them. He had always thought of himself as a simple cowboy, a man who lived by the rules of the open range. But something about being in this camp surrounded by these women made him feel different. He had been saved by them, and he felt a deep gratitude toward them. Tala looked at him thoughtfully. "You'll stay with us tonight. In the morning, we'll see if you're strong enough to ride." Jack nodded. His body ached, but he felt something stirring inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. It was the feeling of being part of something bigger than himself, the feeling of belonging. As night fell, Jack lay in a tent, the warmth of the fire outside and the soft sounds of the camp surrounding him. Nayeli, Tala, and Apache had given him food, and though he was still tired and sore, he felt a sense of peace. It was as if the world had stopped, and for the first time in a long time he wasn't just fighting to survive. He was living, but as he drifted off to sleep he heard their voices again, quietly speaking around the fire. They weren't just talking about his injuries. They were talking about something else, something that Jack didn't fully understand. He caught the words, "He will stay with us and our people need him," but the meaning behind those words was still a mystery. The night stretched on, and Jack drifted deeper into sleep, unaware that the path his life would take had just changed forever. Jack woke to the soft sound of the wind whistling through the canyon. His body was sore, but the pain was bearable. The warmth of the campfire outside reached his tent, and he could hear voices speaking in a language he didn't fully understand. But the tone was calm, almost peaceful. For the first time since he had been ambushed by the bandits, he felt safe. But the safety felt different here, like it was something more than just survival. As he lay there trying to shake off the grogginess from his sleep, Nayeli entered the tent. Her dark eyes scanned his face as if measuring him. "You are awake," she said softly. Jack smiled at her, still feeling weak but grateful. "I am, thanks to you." Nayeli smiled in return but didn't linger. She motioned for him to follow her, her voice low as she spoke. "Come, we need to talk." Jack got up slowly, testing his leg. It wasn't as painful as it had been yesterday. He limped after her, doing his best to keep pace with her long strides. They walked through the camp to the place where the other two women, Tala and Apache, were gathered near the fire. The crackling flames cast dancing shadows on their faces. "Sit," Nayeli said, pointing to an empty spot by the fire. Jack hesitated for a moment, but then he sat down, feeling the heat of the fire against his cold skin. The three women took their places around him. "You are strong," Tala said, her voice serious but not unkind. "But you are not one of us." Jack nodded slowly. He understood what she meant. He was a cowboy, an outsider, someone who didn't belong here, but something inside him had shifted since they saved him. It wasn't just about the physical survival anymore. It was about something deeper, something that tied him to this land, to these women. "I'm not one of you," Jack said, meeting Tala's gaze. "But I want to be." Apache, who had been silently watching him, spoke next. "You can be. But there are things you must understand. This land we protect, it is sacred. The settlers, the army, they threaten everything we hold dear. If you stay with us, you are not just fighting for your life. You will be fighting for all of us. You will fight for our people." Jack's heart thudded in his chest. The weight of her words hit him harder than any bullet ever could. He wasn't just a cowboy anymore. He was being asked to stand with them, not as a guest, but as an ally, a protector, and maybe, just maybe, something more. Nayeli looked at him, her face serious. "We have seen what you can do, Jack. You fight with a strength we rarely see, but strength alone will not win this war. We need your heart, your courage, your willingness to stand with us." Jack's mind raced. He had always considered himself a free man, living by his own rules. But this was different. The Apache women had shown him something he hadn't seen in a long time, a purpose beyond just survival. He had never felt this way before, and the idea of turning his back on them seemed impossible. "What do you want me to do?" Jack asked quietly. Nayeli leaned forward slightly. "We want you to be part of our tribe, but not just as an outsider. We need you to stand with us in the coming battle. The settlers are pushing deeper into our land. They think they can take everything from us. They will come, and we will defend this land with everything we have." Jack's heart beat faster at the thought of what was coming. He wasn't used to fighting for something larger than himself, but for the first time he felt like this was a fight worth having. He wasn't just a cowboy now. He was a man with a purpose, a man who could make a difference. Tala spoke again, her voice firm. "The question is not just about what you will do. The question is about who you will stand with. If you stand with us, you are no longer just a cowboy. You are Apache. You will fight beside us as an equal, as a warrior." Apache added, "And there are consequences. If you stand with us, you will belong to us. You will be more than just an ally. You will be family." Jack looked at each of them. Their faces were serious, but there was also a softness in their eyes. It was clear that this was no simple request. They weren't asking him to fight out of duty. They were asking him to join them because they believed in him. They saw something in him that he wasn't sure he even saw in himself. For a long time, Jack was silent. He thought about his life up until now, about the endless trail of cattle drives, about the lonely nights under the stars. It had always been about survival, always about staying one step ahead of the world. But now he had something to fight for. He had found something more than just a place to survive. He had found a place to belong. "I'll stay," Jack said finally, his voice steady. "I'll stand with you." Nayeli smiled, and there was a warmth in her eyes. "You will not regret this, Jack. The decision had been made." But there was no time to celebrate. The war had already begun. The settlers were coming. The Apache people were preparing for battle, and Jack was no longer an outsider. He was part of something bigger now. That afternoon, Jack trained with the women, learning their ways, their skills. He had always been a good shot, but the Apache methods were different. They didn't rely on just strength. They relied on stealth, on the land and on each other. Jack practiced their techniques with Tala, learning how to move through the shadows, how to use the terrain to his advantage. Apache taught him how to read the signs of the land, the subtle clues left by the wind and the earth that could tell them where the settlers were moving. Days passed, and Jack grew stronger. He was no longer the cowboy who had stumbled into the Apache camp injured and confused. He was now part of the tribe, learning their ways and preparing for the battle that was coming. The day of the battle finally arrived. The Apache warriors, including Jack, stood ready on the high ridges, looking down at the settler forces below. The wind blew, carrying the scent of dust and smoke. Jack's heart beat with anticipation, but there was no fear. This was his fight now. These were his people. Nayeli stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Are you ready, Jack?" she asked softly. He nodded, his hand resting on the hilt of his rifle. "I'm ready." As the settler forces advanced, the Apache warriors moved quickly, silently positioning themselves for the attack. Jack followed Nayeli and the others, his heart pounding in his chest but his mind clear. This was where he was meant to be. He was no longer a lone cowboy. He was Apache. The battle began, and the Apache warriors fought with a fierce determination. Jack fought by their side, using everything he had learned. They moved as one, a single force, striking swiftly and disappearing into the landscape like shadows. The settlers were unprepared for the fierce resistance. The Apache warriors knew the land better than anyone, and they used it to their advantage. The battle raged on for hours, but as the sun began to set, the settlers were forced to retreat. The Apache had won. As the dust settled and the survivors gathered, Jack looked around at the women who had saved him. They were tired, but their faces held a quiet pride. They had defended their land, their way of life, and now they were stronger than ever. Jack stood with them, no longer a stranger. He was one of them, part of the tribe. He had found something worth fighting for, and in doing so, he had found something even more important, a place to belong. And as he stood there, surrounded by the women who had saved him, he knew that this was just the beginning. The future was uncertain, but he was ready to face it with them. Together they would fight for their people, for their land, and for each other.